Alright, so there's this new company out there called Upgraded. It's basically an upgrade program for laptop buyers. You pay a set monthly amount and you get a new MacBook every 2 years. Sounds interesting on the surface, but in reality, I've looked into it and it's quite possibly the worst way to buy a laptop. This all started, by the way, when they reached out to me to do a sponsored video. If you've been watching this channel for a while, you'll know that we don't do a lot of sponsored videos. It's just not our strategy. What we're trying to do here is to fix online shopping. Shopping has just become a nightmare. Too many products, which makes it super stressful about choosing the right one, sponsored search results crowding out real ones, fake reviews, low effort best of lists of which products to buy just to farm affiliate links, and to make it worse, AI parroting back a lot of this bad data. So our business model is to produce trustworthy reviews with a website that's just easy to use. We then get a small commission if you do buy something that we recommend. That being said, occasionally we do take sponsors on to help supercharge our growth, but we limit them to product announcements or laptop adjacent products, like this service by Upgraded. But to be one of our sponsors, we heavily vet the company, and the more I looked into this new service Upgraded, the more frustrated and upset I really became. Let's get into it. Upgraded, they seem to have 3 options. The main one is that you apply for a loan to buy a new MacBook, any MacBook of your choosing. Their own stipulation is you must get AppleCare Plus, the extended warranty on it. The loan is done via a firm for a 36-month term. The purchase is facilitated by what appears to be an Apple-authorized dealer called Gatortech. Anyway, after 24 months of the 36 payments, you can send back your laptop and Upgraded will send you a new one. From the fine print, it seems that they assess the condition of the laptop you send back. If it meets their standards, they pay off the remaining balance of the loan, i.e. the last 12 months, and then they start a new loan for you for your new MacBook. I'm assuming that they're selling your old one to cover the remaining payments. Anyway, more on that later. All said and done, you're getting a new MacBook every 2 years. Now, there are a couple of alternate options. At the 24-month mark, you can simply leave the program by returning your laptop. Or, since it's technically a 36-month loan, you can keep paying the remaining 12 payments and just keep the laptop. Alright, so the big question is this actually worth doing? For most people, absolutely not. Let's go through the math. We're going to use the base model MacBook Pro 14 as our example. Now, Upgraded makes you buy AppleCare Plus, as I said, so that's a total purchase price of $1,878 before we consider taxes. I'm going to leave taxes out of this analysis just to keep it simple. So, our $1,878 purchase translates to 36 payments of $52.17. That's per month. That's assuming a 0% interest rate, which Upgraded happily assumes. This is a very big assumption. If you look at the fine print, it says 0 to 36% APR. From my research, I found a CNBC article that states that only 43% of people who take out a buy now pay later loan with a firm get that 0% APR. Because of the range of interest rates that you may actually get, I created 3 interest rate scenarios. One with a 0% APR, one with a 10%, and then one with a worse 36%. Let's go with option 1. You get a new laptop after 24 months. The first issue with this option is that you're missing out on discounts. Apple laptops are regularly on sale at retailers. Finding a MacBook for $200 off is super easy. In fact, around Black Friday, big sales periods like that, I've seen them discounted by as much as $400. When buying with Upgraded, they do not seem to pass on any sort of sale pricing. They also don't give you credit card rewards. It's not uncommon for people to use Amazon's 5% credit card. So if you buy through Upgraded, straight off the bat, you are down around $300. Now, at the end of the 24 months, if you're on that 0% APR, obviously you've paid $0 in interest. But if your APR is 10%, you'll have paid $202, and at 36%, a whopping $783 in interest. But we're missing something. When you send back your laptop to Upgraded, they pay down the rest of your loan. Is the amount that you're getting better or worse off than if you just sold it yourself? No surprises, it's worse. They're essentially paying off the last 12 months of your 36-month loan. If you do the math, they are paying $626 for your 2-year-old MacBook Pro with AppleCare Plus. I promise you, you can get a lot more for it if you just sell it yourself. Just for this analysis, we'll say that a MacBook fully depreciates after 5 years, as they do tend to hold their value well in the second-hand market. So, our 2-year-old MacBook Pro with AppleCare Plus should be worth around $1,100. Maybe a little less, but you guys get the point. So, If we add all this together, by buying through Upgraded, you're losing around $300 by not being able to take advantage of sales pricing and rewards. Then you're losing between $0 to $800 because of interest. Then you're losing around $500 by having them sell your old laptop versus you doing it yourself. In total, using Upgraded's 2-year upgrade service will cost you between $800 to $1,600 more than just buying the laptop yourself. And keep in mind, they force you to buy AppleCare Plus. You may not want that, so that balloons that amount by almost $300 more. But it gets worse with option 2. This is the one where you give back the laptop at the end of the 2 years. This makes Upgraded essentially a super expensive 2-year rental program. In this case, you're essentially paying the principal of the loan and the interest for 2 years but have nothing to show for it at the end. That means you've paid $1,252 at an interest rate of 0%, $1,454 if it's 10%, and $2,035 if it's 36%. That is atrocious. You could literally have bought an entire MacBook for that money. Well, how about option 3? In this case, you're just paying out the full 3-year term and keeping the laptop. This is the best of the 3 options, but you're still missing out on buying the laptop on a discount. You still have to buy AppleCare Plus, and of course, you still have to pay interest on your loan if you don't get that headline 0% rate. This option, it ends up costing you between $300 and $1,500 more than if you just bought the laptop yourself outright. Alright, so I've shown you that buying through Upgraded just sucks compared to buying your laptop outright. But what happens if you can't afford to buy a new MacBook outright? You simply don't have the money. If you can't afford to buy a new MacBook, there are plenty of other options. Firstly, you could buy a prior gen MacBook for a lot less. Both the Airs and the Pros, they use the same chassis as they have for the last several years, and their internals, they haven't changed all that much. You're going to be absolutely fine buying a MacBook that's a generation or 2 older. Speaking personally, I bought my girlfriend a new MacBook Air M3 from last year for $899. That's with 16GB of memory and 512GB of storage. That's a huge saving, and I promise you, she won't notice that it doesn't have the latest M4 chip. My only note when buying an older model is just to avoid one with 8GB of memory if you can. Apple used to limit the memory on their entry-level MacBooks. I'm not saying don't buy an 8GB of memory MacBook, but those models should only be purchased for $400 or less. Another option if you're tight on cash is to buy a renewed or open box MacBook. These are laptops that people have returned. They are often much cheaper, and if you buy from a reputable reseller, you'll still be covered by their return and exchange policy. Heck, a lot of times you'll even be able to get the manufacturer's warranty on it and even add AppleCare Plus for even more coverage. Finally, if even that's too expensive, you can probably buy a cheap Windows laptop that will do you absolutely fine. Moral of the story, for most people, if you can't afford to buy a brand new MacBook, there are many options out there. You really shouldn't use a program like Upgraded, which is just going to put you in a worse financial position. But there is one exception to this that I really want to cover. What happens if you need a loan? You simply need a laptop for work or school and you can't afford any of the options I've gone through so far. In this case, just use a firm directly. Don't go through Upgraded. By using a firm directly, you can buy from a retailer. That means you can save money by buying an older MacBook, you can save money by buying a renewed one, you can save money by taking advantage of sales pricing, and you don't have to spend money on AppleCare Plus if you didn't want it. Plus, when you're done with the laptop, you can sell it yourself for more than you'll get back through Upgraded. Folks, I really don't see any positives of going through Upgraded. Let me know with a comment below if you guys think I'm missing anything. Look, I want to wrap with a couple of closing thoughts. In general, I hate buy now pay later services like Affirm's. They try to focus your attention on low monthly payments, so you ignore the glaring truth, the total cost of the loan. In reality, anytime you interject a profit-making company into a transaction, that company's aim is to extract as much money for themselves from the transaction as possible, meaning it's worse for you. All Affirm does is move money from poor people's pockets who can't afford to buy a new laptop to rich people's, the shareholders of Affirm. Affirm claims they make buying things more accessible, and yes, perhaps in the short term they do. But in the long term, they often make your financial situation worse, especially for poorer people who often don't have good credit and aren't getting that headline 0% rate. This leads to debt traps. When you take out a loan on a fast depreciating asset like a laptop, it's quite possible to get into a negative equity situation. That's where the value of the thing that you financed is worth less than the remaining principal of the loan. This limits your options on getting out of a potentially high interest rate loan, as you can't just sell the laptop and pay down the loan, as the value of the laptop may not fully cover the remaining principal balance of the loan. Plus, if you buy anything with a loan, there is always a risk that if you find yourself in a tough financial situation and miss payments. A firm claims that they don't charge late payment fees, but late payments could affect your credit score. That means that in the future, loans you get are likely to be at a higher interest rate. Buy now, pay later, it just plays into this culture of endless consumerism where we buy the latest thing that we just don't need. Influencers hyping up products way too much also just doesn't help here. As I've clearly showed you today, just like buying a car, if you don't have enough money to buy a new laptop, there are plenty of options available. Buy a second-hand one, buy an older model, or buy a cheaper one. In the case of Upgraded, you are inserting yet another company into the transaction that seeks to extract profit. In Upgraded's case, they don't really offer any additional service for the money they take, certainly not much more than what a firm is already offering. The only thing that I can see that Upgraded does is simplify selling your older second-hand laptop. But in reality, it's not that hard to sell a laptop, and you'll recoup a lot more money if you do it yourself. And just stating the obvious, who needs to upgrade their MacBook every 2 years anyway? The only people who would want to do such a thing are those with tons of money, and those people, they shouldn't be using Upgraded anyway. Look, I'm sorry to be shitting on a company like this, but as I said, my strategy here with this business is to just cut through the noise and mess that has become online shopping. Using Upgraded is a trap, and it's more of a downgrade than an upgrade. Josh out.